Welcome to another episode of the Down Under Stormtrooper. I'm really excited to announce that my A New Hope stunt Stormtrooper costume has finally been approved. And going through the approval process again made me reflect on what it was like the first time I tried to join the Legion about 8 years or so ago, and just how difficult and such a challenge it felt like to get my costume approved. In today's video, I'm going to give you 5 tips that will help you get your costume approved with the 501st Legion, hopefully the first time round. My first tip is to make sure that you've researched your costume thoroughly. 501st Legion approved costumes look like they've just stepped off one of the sets of the movies. And to help you with that endeavour, the 501st Legion has a set of standards that they call a Costume Reference Library, or CRL for short. The CRL for each costume that can be approved by the 501st Legion is available on the 501st Legion website, 501st.com. Once you go to the costuming section of the website, you'll be able to find your costume alphabetically or by detachment. Whenever I'm working on a costume, I like to make a printout of the CRL and put it all together into a folder. That makes it nice and easy to access and to reference as you're building the costume. The CRL for each costume is broken down into various parts such as the helmet, the forearms, the torso, chest pieces, and it'll let you know how you need to make sure that you build the costume to look like it's built off the screen. It'll often detail the type of materials you need to use in your costume, such as leather or pleather or plastics, and will often give you some tips on what sort of weathering you need to apply. In addition to the CRL, you'll find some great references for your costume on the associated detachment for that costume type. So for example, with a Stormtrooper, the 1st Imperial Stormtrooper detachment is your go-to resource. And once you join the forums for your detachment, you'll be able to find a wealth of information, threads from different people that have already gone through the process of building and getting their costume approved. You'll often find step-by-step instructions from members that detail how to put together a costume. Tips such as what to do with the costume parts when you get them straight out of the box, whether or not the parts need trimming, how to trim them, what sort of return edges you should have, how to size them appropriately, and what parts go together. You'll be able to find a treasure trove of reference photos to look at, even tips on how to strap your costume together, and who are good suppliers for the various parts. My second tip would be to join the forums of your local garrison, and this can be an absolute game changer. So 501st Legion is all about community, and the local membership will be some of the best resources you'll be able to find. Now, what can you expect when you join your local garrison? So there's often things like Armour parties. Now these are meetups where members go to somebody's place and they will work together and assemble costumes. You better get expert advice. Experienced members know what works and what doesn't work for specific builds, and they'll be able to share that information. And let's not forget the importance of moral support. Building a costume can be daunting and really challenging, so having someone cheer you along as you're building your costume goes a long way. Most garrisons have websites, social media and forums where you can introduce yourself and get involved. And don't be shy, we love welcoming new members. Tip number 3 is to get multiple feedback rounds. Don't rush to submit your application. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking their costume's ready when it's not. So here's how you can get some valuable feedback. The first thing I would do is to get yourself a build thread on one of the forums. Now, a build thread is essentially where you start detailing when your costume arrives, some of the steps you're making to build it, and any questions you've got. Once you've got a build thread, you can then upload progress photos and you can ask for specific advice on particular challenges that you're having. And make sure you listen to the feedback that you receive. It can be quite tough to hear critiques, but those members want you to succeed. Most people that get approved first try are the ones that have sought multiple rounds of feedback. Tip 4 is to be patient and persistent. Let's be honest, the process can take a little while. As you get feedback from the membership, you'll probably need to make some adjustments and then resubmit some new photos to show those changes. Here's how to stay motivated. Expect feedback. Now, don't take it personally, it's part of the process and most people go through this. As you're going through your build, I would set small goals. Break your build up into manageable steps and avoid feeling overwhelmed. Make sure you celebrate your progress, so after you complete a certain part of the build, treat yourself with maybe a bar of chocolate or go have a trip at the movies. Every small victory gets you closer to approval. And remember, every Legion member you see at events has gone through exactly the same approval process. Tip number 5 is about how to take the best approval photos. This step's really important because the photos that you submit are often the first exposure that the GML will have to your costume that you're wanting to get approved. The GML, that's the Garrison Membership Liaison, they'll be the team that will be looking at your costume and judging it. Here are some must-follow tips that will help you nail your photos and avoid unnecessarily backwards and forwards with the approval team. Firstly, get a friend to help. Don't try and take the photos yourself, and preferably if you can get someone that actually understands the costume and how it goes together and how it should look, then that's going to really help with the approval photos. They can make sure that everything's positioned correctly and help you get the photos from the right angles. And trust me, having an extra set of eyes is really important, especially if your armour shifts as you move around. Don't forget to take photos from all the required angles. Most costumes require full views from the front, back and both sides. Probably a good idea to check the CRL for any specific photo requirements like close-ups and key details and accessories. And don't forget accessories like blasters and helmets. If your costume requires both unhelmeted and helmeted versions, make sure you take photos of both. When you're taking the photos, make sure the photographer is taking them from waist height. You don't want the angle to be positioned too high. Before snapping photos, make sure that everything is sitting in the right place. Armour pieces need to be symmetrical and properly aligned. Make sure that nothing's visibly loose, so watch out for any straps or fasteners. Smoothing out any wrinkles in soft parts can make a huge difference on the camera. Have your CRL reference handy, whether that's electronically on, say, like an iPad or printed out like I do on a folder. That way you can double check every detail to make sure it matches the standard. This simple step can help you catch potential issues before you submit your photos. Now, I can't understate, lighting and background is really important with your approval photos. Use bright, even lighting. Now, you don't have to have a studio set up like I do here, but just make sure that everything is evenly lit. Don't introduce any harsh shadows because they'll come up in the photo and the GML will often question what those are. Make sure you pick a neutral background like a blank wall or a green screen like this. Don't stand too close to your backdrop either. You don't want to introduce shadows. That can make it a little bit harder for the GML when they're looking at your photos. You want to make sure that having a blank background really helps focus the attention on your costume. I like to make sure that the colour of my backdrop provides a lot of contrast to the costume that I'm wearing. So for example, with a Stormtrooper, I wouldn't stand against a white backdrop, nor would I stand against a black one because the details with the underarm are going to get hidden. And finally, quality counts. Make sure that you provide really high resolution photos. Blurry or pixelated photos can make it hard for the approval team to assess your costume accurately. Taking great approval photos can be really tedious, but it's absolutely worth the effort. A well-documented submission significantly increases your chance of approval first try. And that's the ultimate goal, right? If these tips helped you at all, drop me a comment and let me know what costume you're working on. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe click that notification bell so you know when the next video gets released. I'd like to wish you all the best for your photo first approval journey, and may those costuming gods be with you.